be an intimidating undertaking. It doesn't need to be. I follow a tried and true simple structure each time, which ensures I set myself up for success. In this video, we'll go through the process. I'll share many tips and tricks, and for the purpose of today's video, we'll be doing a deep dive into my planning for the Sunshine Coast Hinterland Great Walk as an example. Hi, I'm Jenny and I'm dedicated to adventure. If you've ever wanted to go on a more complex day hike or remote area day hike, or are busy progressing your skills to achieve multi-day hiking but have felt unsure of the hike planning process, then this video is for you. This video is the second of many planned in the How To Hiking series playlist. In upcoming videos, I'll share everything you need to know about how to write and communicate your hike plan, and things like choosing the right gear to suit your individual hike, be it alpine, be it bush, be it beach. I can cover all of that for you. Also things like hikers' food and nutrition, which is an important subject to me, and how to hike solo safely, and even quirky little things like how to have a hot bath on the trail. Today though, I'll walk you through the key aspects of my hike planning structure. We'll cover everything from choosing your next several hikes, to training, writing up and communicating your hike plan, to logistics, organisational structure, choosing the right gear, the food, the hike itself, and finally, how to clean and store your gear after the hike. You know, the first step is choosing a region and identifying one or several hikes that you'd like to achieve, or having a preliminary look at perhaps 2 multi-day tracks that you'd like to do before deciding which one will come first. One of the key pieces of information that I can provide is that when choosing your next big adventure, be brutally honest in carefully assessing both your current fitness level, your general ability, and of course your previous hiking experience. I think a good mindset to have is not to increase your next hike more than around 20% of your previous hike. Some like to go on, say, a 1 or 2 night multi-day adventure first before they take on something more substantial. In my case, I chose a region that I was very familiar with and a track that I knew well. So I jumped straight into a 5-day multi-day hike on the Sunshine Coast Hinterland Great Walk, which is a modification of the 4-day track. Each year, before I set off on my big goal adventure, I'll go on a 4-dayer, a 6-dayer, and then an 8-dayer for my final preparation. For a first multi-dayer, say 4 days, I expand my itinerary to allow 5 days, just in case I'm needing to walk at a slower pace, which you'll do if you're in the beginning stages of managing an injury, or perhaps you need to walk more slowly because you have a complex medical condition that you're managing, one that you've been very used to managing, or perhaps even you'd like to spend more time on having a few swims or spending more time on photography. So that's why I like to expand my 4-dayer into allowing it to be a 5-dayer initially. In an upcoming video, you'll see me walking the entirety of the Sunshine Coast Hinterland Great Walk, but for the purpose of this video, let's dive into the planning process more deeply now. Once you've decided on your complex remote area day hike or your multi-day hike, the next thing you might like to consider is whether you'd like to walk solo or whether you'd like to hike with a buddy. Now, if you do choose to hike solo like I prefer to, then you'll want to have a look at this in-depth hike planning and make sure you've dialed it in really properly. How you decide your region or track may come down to a few things. Perhaps you're interested in a location that's convenient to your home. Of course, you'll be considering your current fitness ability and experience level. You may also be interested in your preferred kind of scenery or terrain, temperature, or indeed degree of technicality. I love the Sunshine Coast Hinterland track for a number of reasons, and I do walk this track multiple times each year for a number of reasons. For me, it's convenience factor. It's my easiest accessible multi-day track from home. Each day's hiking also has a lot of backup security for me or safety, because there are numerous exit points or pick up drop off points should the need ever arise. There's enough technicality of the trail surface to make it really good for training. Plenty of gnarled roots, rocky rainforest floor, mud, elevation gain and loss, escarpment, walking, and of course tremendous scenery. And as there's mobile service throughout, bits and pieces of every single day means that I have the ability to perform the very important safety check-ins with my safety contacts, and I do that via texting. I can call them, and also sometimes I'll send short texted videos through as well to my safety contacts. This trail is perfect for building experience and gaining confidence. My alpine versions, for the purpose of this video, in tremendous weather, nice and clear, no big weather fronts going to come through, anything like that. Those trails would be ones like Mount Feathertop via the Razorback Trail, and I camp overnight at Federation Hut there. Or there's the Falls to Hotham Alpine Walk, which is another great, fairly easy track. And then also, again, in really clear weather, I'd also suggest walking the main range track up in Kosciuszko National Park and camping out 1 or 2 nights overnight as well. In Tassie, there are so many options. I'm not going to go into those. And I've also found the same to be true in Southwest WA. In fact, there's a couple of really excellent guidebooks written by Mark Pybus, and he's from the website The Life of Pi, that I found very helpful. And speaking to those guys, they've helped my planning a lot when I was hiking over in Western Australia for 4 months. Great guys. Donovan D'Souza is the other part of that duo, and they have the podcast Real Trail Talk. Love their podcast. Personally, I like to keep pretty much 95% of my hike planning done solely on my iPhone, stored in my notes section, which can be easily shared to my other safety contacts. So I have, of course, done that for the Sunshine Coast Hinterland Great Walk. Let's have a little bit of a look at that. You'll see that I edit the maps, break it up into day sections. You'll see this in proper detail, but I've included my rest stop breaks, absolutely everything in great detail, everything that my safety contacts would need to know. But when you're thinking about a multi-week hike, or indeed a long distance hike like the Araroa Trail in New Zealand or the Australian Alps walking track, I completed the planning for both last year because I wasn't sure which track I was going to take on first. And it turns out I'm going to be doing the South Island of New Zealand starting at the end of this year. And so I spent all of last year getting to know the track, and I had the year before as well. And for me, initially I thought it'd be a cool memento and also a Bible for my safety contacts, showing them um, some pretty good detail about the trail. And I chose 3 YouTubers who I thought were either similar age to myself or seemed to hike at a similar pace or went through some of the issues that most long distance hikers experience and ones that I will certainly experience. And the ones that came out on top to match my particular situation were a couple of wonderful Brisbane ladies, Nikki and Judy from the channel Gnarly Adventures. Most of you will be very familiar with their content. But anyway, I decided to start off with a folder for that one, and I screenshotted and edited all of the maps from the Araroa Trail app and printed them out because I thought they'd be easier for my safety contacts to follow. And then initially, while I was getting my brain used to the trail, I jotted down their itineraries for each section for the entire length of the South Island. And it just helped me to identify 3 different hikers who experienced the trail in different ways, went at different paces, and also broke the trail up a little bit differently and added on a couple of side trips. Now, in my case, or in anyone's case really, when you're doing a long distance hike, you'll find that planning, day 10 I'm going to be such and such, and day 20 I'm going to be such and such. All of that goes out of the window because you're dealing with working around complex weather systems, and in my case I'll be waiting those out, and you'll be dealing with niggly injuries that pop up from time to time that every long distance hiker experiences. And sometimes you'll want to hike further, sometimes you'll want to stop at a shelter hut earlier. So a lot of this planning does go out the window to a certain extent as far as where you'll be on day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to day 100 or wherever you're going to stop. The next step is to lock in a date. And I tend to plan all of my bigger hikes in 3-year blocks. And I hike for about 8 months of the year. So that equates to an enormous amount of time invested, which is why I created this streamlined system. For some day hikes and some multi-days, I'm able to plan a plan A, a plan B, dates just in case. In the case of those that have a booking system attached though, like the Sunshine Coast Hinterland Great Walk, I've locked in dates for my 3 rotations so that I've booked those campsites. For a series of complex day hikes, I'm planning several months out still so that I have plenty of time to rethink, perhaps reorder those hikes. But the dates will be locked in several months ahead, and I start my training immediately. When I'm planning for either a multi-week or a long distance hike, I plan in earnest 1 to 2 years out. To put this in context, I'm solo backpacking the entire length of the South Island of New Zealand along the Araroa Trail, starting at the end of this year. 90% of that in-depth planning was completed last year, and this year, since mid-January, I've been focusing on all of my training and all of the medical side for my situation, all of that prep. I chose to have a complex right ankle reconstruction in first week of March, actually, as part of my prep for the Araroa. So it's important that for me, at my age, that I start my physical training as early as possible. And that's on the back of already being fairly fit. But it might work to leave your training for other hikers till, only a month or two out. But in my particular situation, I'm an older hiker. I'm dealing with complex medical issues. So I start as early as I possibly can. In the next months, I'll be doing 3 rotations of the Sunshine Coast Hinterland Great Walk Trail as part of my preparation for the Araroa, along with my usual summit training and river and creek crossing training. This year, I'm working fortnightly with a sports physio and an advanced athlete exercise physiologist in order to give me the best chance of success, to set myself up for success. As I'm a detail orientated person, I believe it's really important to focus on the planning process in great depth. I try and anticipate and plan for how I'd personally deal with anything that comes up that's abnormal, um, so that I have a plan in my head already to put into place. And that definitely is a good formula for success for me. I think through every aspect most carefully. As far as researching the trail goes, first I read all of the information on national parks through the Parks and Wildlife websites. I read quite a few hiking guidebooks, of course. Also look up and read countless blogs. There's lots of very interesting and useful information there. I'll join the appropriate Facebook group and ask lots of questions, talk to anyone who I know has walked the trail recently. And I have a few favourites like Going Feral, Kevin Moss, with that one, and as I said before, Gnarly Adventures. There's a few others that I really depend on. Ben Jones is another great one to ask questions. He's been really helpful as well. What else do I do? And of course, watch endless YouTube videos, because nothing translates for me like seeing the actual trail and the conditions that I'll be walking through. And I also really value listening to podcast interviews. Then I do a deep dive into looking at the corresponding topographical maps and make sure I'm understanding those as well. After I've read each traditional version of each day's hiking section, I take a good hard look at myself to determine whether I'm happy with walking the standard days, or ask myself, do I need to shorten a particular day hike, like I did on the Cape to Cape track in Western Australia, through 2 sections of walking long stretches of deep, soft sand beaches, and I broke a single day up into 2 days, and I did that twice to suit my level of ability and also my comfort level, and to enhance the hike, to make sure I'm enjoying the heck out of the hike, because that's my primary concern, along with safety. I'll also look at possible side tracks or additional natural features that I'd like to include as well. Then I look at the transport side. I might drive myself to the trailhead. My mountain man might drop me off and pick me up, or a friend might help out, or failing all of those options, then of course I'll employ a shuttle company's help. Looking at detailed topographical maps in conjunction with seeing the actual trail on YouTube videos helps me obtain a really solid understanding of the elevation gain and loss that I'll be experiencing every day, along with what the trail actually looks like underfoot. With the Sunshine Coast Hinterland Great Walk in mind, the track consists of a clearly defined track which meanders its way through rocky, complex, tree-rooted, muddy at times rainforest floor predominantly. The rocks are slippery, particularly around the creeks and the waterfalls. There are plenty of steps and, yes, like with lots of multi-day hikes, you can expect some road walking as well. Next, I'll begin writing my formalized digital copy of my hike plan, which is shared and communicated with my 2 to 4 safety contacts who track my progress every day, all day, on every hike. In my hike, I record all of the basics of each day's walking, like the start-stop locations, the length, the elevation gain and loss, the grade of the track, the summits that I'll be achieving if it's that type of hike. But in my own personal situation, I take a heap of screenshots of the topographical maps, and in addition to the normal information, I'll add in where I anticipate stopping for a food and hydration break, for example, and I choose to do that out in the open so that my PLB GPS tracker can communicate my progress with my safety contacts. And in these locations, most of the time, I'll be able to perform my scheduled check-in communication with them just via a simple text. I'll also communicate the sections of more technical trail where I'm likely to take more time, or those areas where I'm at a higher risk. That way, when my safety contacts do see that I'm moving more slowly through a particular section, they'll understand why. On the other hand, if they see me moving really slowly through what is determined as an easy section, then without me communicating anything, they'll already know that I'm either A, managing higher end spinal pain, or I'm managing the onset of a simple injury that a lot of hikers might face. And they'll know that without me communicating anything, because the detail will already be in my hike plan. Also in my hike plan, I'll communicate the expected locations where they can expect me to check in with them, which is usually 4 to 6 times a day. As far as the topographical maps go, I personally just screenshot the maps and then write down all of the information on them, showing very clearly my start and stop position, my meal break position, showing the full route detail, along with showing possible exit points should I need to be picked up for any reason, or should I choose to shorten the hike, so they'll know where those exit points are. And when I arrive into camp at the end of the day, I have a predetermined check-in time every day, regardless, which is around 4 o'clock. And I perform that check-in by using my PLB GPS tracker, and it just sends a quick message saying, at camp, all good. As far as safety goes, and I will do a completely separate video where we'll dive in deep to that aspect, because it's far too much to cover in this video, but of course I carry a first aid kit particular to my own needs. I use a Spot Gen 4 PLB GPS tracker, and with my iPhone, of course, I'm able to use the Find My Friends app and share my location with all of my safety contacts. So there's I've got a backup to a backup. Another key element concerns water. So during my researching phase, I identify all possible water sources, because personally, whilst I do carry water each day, I prefer to gather, treat, and drink water from creeks and rivers and other sources along the way. So you'll find me topping up my water supply probably 3 times a day, and so that's so that I can minimize the weight carried. Doesn't work in all situations, of course. There are days where I've had to carry 4 or even indeed 5 liters of water, which isn't ideal, but usually I try and minimize the weight carried by topping up my water from different sources all day long. Now, in regards to gear, I use a website called lighterpack.com, and because I'm an older hiker, my goal is always to minimize the weight of gear that's stored in my backpack. So for me, I have chosen to invest heavily into as much ultralight gear as possible to help out in that department. Um, and that choice allows me to carry a smaller pack. So this is a 35-litre Arc'teryx pack. It currently has 12 kilos of gear in it, but because it's a roll top bag with a brain on top, it also extends to about 45 litres. I personally find a 55-litre pack too big for me. So for example, my 6-week solo alpine trip, this was the pack I took, and this will be the pack that I will take to New Zealand as well. Researching the range of weather that you're likely to encounter on your multi-day hike or long distance hike is really important too. You know, it's really important to get familiar with what the monthly averages are, what the lowest and highest minimum and maximum temperatures are going to be, to help you to choose your gear most carefully. Personally, when I hike, I try to the very best of my ability to choose good weather windows. So you won't find me, generally speaking, hiking in really bad weather systems. Maybe at the tail end of one, maybe at the beginning of one, but and when I'm caught out, I'll shelter in a hut if that's the case. That's only happened once so far in the last few decades. I choose each piece of gear accordingly to what the weather's likely to be like. And as I said, I focus on the lightest and most efficient gear. Months in advance, I will be taking out each item of gear. I'll be putting up my tent, checking my ground sheet, inflating my sleeping pad to ensure there aren't any holes in it, and then repairing or replacing whatever I need to do to ensure that all of my gear is really dialed down. Throughout this phase, I'll keep asking myself, is this item absolutely essential? And yes, that's a bit of a balancing act. Everyone's preferences are different, but for me, I want to keep the weight down. There are a couple of key areas where I'm happy to carry a bit more weight. In regards to my sleep system, it's really important for me to achieve the best quality night's sleep that I can. So if I need to add like an extra small piece of foam mat to go under a particular section of my body, I'm quite happy to carry that extra little bit of weight in that area. I spend a lot of time choosing my hiking food and thinking about the overall nutrition. You know, that's an area that's really important to me. I value that. So I'm happy also to carry some extra weight in this area to incorporate more fresh food items. Now, I will dive into the nutrition and all of the hiking food in a separate video, but just so you know, that is an area that I'm particularly interested in. So on a strenuous day hike, or more likely actually multi-day or multi-week or long distance hike, I try to ensure that I'm ingesting 3,000 calories a day, and I'll make sure that that is maximized or minimized to 650 grams of weight carried. And in my case, I'll incorporate a fair bit of the nutrition also into liquid food as well. For the purpose of the Sunshine Coast Hinterland Great Walk, just briefly for brekkie, I'll have one or two breakfasts, either my beefed up muesli, which has heaps of seeds and nuts in, as well as the oatmeal and milk powder, or I'll have 3 Weet-Bix with a tablespoon of wheat germ, along with two 480 milliliter
cups of hot tea. As for the timing, I usually drink the tea as I'm packing up camp, and then brekkie will already be cold soaking. I'll do that the night before, and I tend to eat that at the first scenic spot down the trail. So usually about 90 minutes into my hiking day, whether it's a waterfall or a creek or just a beautiful view, I'll have my first break there. Morning tea, I'll usually have 2 hard-boiled eggs on a day when I have left town. Quite often I'll carry hard-boiled eggs for the first 3 days, and I find that really good. I use a dehydrated greens juice in my water bottle for morning tea as well. Plus, very importantly, my second dose of some form of carbohydrate for the day. For lunch, I also like to have a fresh food component. So I'll have my spinach wrap. So that's a spinach wrap, and on that spinach wrap, I lay down baby spinach leaves and slabs of vintage cheese, and then also have some little sliced up bits of crystallized ginger. Wrap that all up. That's absolutely delicious, and it gives me the carbohydrates that I need. It tops up my nutrition, and I find that lunch um, really tasty, and that's important when you're on a multi-day hike or something longer. Then throughout the afternoon, I'll keep on eating my trail snacks, which do have a lot of nuts in them, some dried cranberries, more dried ginger, because that's particularly what I like. In regards to the whole protein debate, I choose to start my protein upload about 2/3 the way into my hiking day, after I've eaten as much carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, as I can cram into me, because that's really important. When I get into camp, I'll choose a site, but then I'll start the hydration and protein intake. So I'll have a chocolate protein shake, or a chocolate collagen shake is the other one that I really love. So that's made with milk powder as well. And I'll have some form of a snack, and then I'll get stuck into setting up my tent and sleep system. Then usually after a bit of a lie down, I'll go to a nice scenic spot and enjoy some happy hour snacks and have an early dinner. And the dinner will be fairly protein rich, but it will have a lot of carbohydrates as well. I'll finish with a sweet treat, but I'll make sure that I rehydrate early so that I'm not getting up and down all night to go to the loo. In regards to technology, a few weeks before my hike, I'll lie out all my technology gear, anything that needs charging. I'll thoroughly check and test every single item. Then the week of, I'll usually pack my backpack as much as I possibly can. Once again, though, with the technology stuff and the batteries and lights, headlamps and air pumps, whatever it is that you're carrying, I'll thoroughly check those again. And then the day before, I also have a final routine of checking specific things. Like I'll be checking the weather the day before. I'll be topping up the charge in my batteries and everything, make sure everything's fully charged. I go to a lot of trouble to try and anticipate my battery usage, what I'm going to need. That's really important. I've done that for so long now, I've got that down pat. But there are some preparation things that I do with my iPhone. I'll go through all of my settings and minimize my power usage as much as possible. So I'll change various settings on my iPhone to extend my battery life. And when I'm on trail, I use a mix of having my iPhone in plane mode, in aeroplane mode, or also in active mode, depending on where I am. Then also the day before, I'll spend about 15 minutes briefing all of my safety contacts about the hikes and any concerns that I might have, any tricky areas. And then the last thing I do before I go to bed is I write a few sticky notes of things that I don't want to be forgetting in the morning. Now, when I come home from a hike, of course, you're going to be really tired. And the last thing you want to be doing is doing anything to do with your backpacking gear. But personally, but as soon as I do have a quick shower, I'll have a shower first. But straight after that, I'll get my tent out. I'll air it out overnight. I'll also get my down sleeping bag out, fluff it out, air it out, and I might leave some of the other items like laundry and that till the next day, but I'll definitely do at least the tent and the sleeping bag as soon as I get home. The next day though, I will know how well, for example, my raincoat has performed, whether it needs to be washed and waterproofed. Now, I don't have the particular washing liquid that I use here, but I do have the waterproofing liquid and the specific washing detergent that you use is also in this product as well. As far as my down items go, it depends on how much I've used them each year, but generally speaking, once a year, I'll use a specific down washing liquid, and I'll use that on my micro puff jacket, but also on my down sleeping bag as well. So it's really important to look after your gear. Then after they're all washed and dried, I'll hang the down items up and let them air out for probably 4 or 5 days. And the same with the raincoat after it's been re-waterproofed, so that I'm absolutely sure that they are all 100% dry. And then the tents, I'll leave them just loosely aerated in one of those big plastic, I think they're about a 35-litre tub. Just put it in there loosely, not packed up in any shape or form. With the down sleeping bag, I hang it over a coat hanger and leave it in a wardrobe with the doors open after I'm absolutely sure that it has been dried out. You know, if you take care of your gear, then it really does last a very long time. So when you come back from your latest adventure, spend a bit of time making sure that you've looked after your pack. I re-waterproof my pack, for example, as well. Wash all the bags, like on this one. Oh, heavy. On the straps, I'll have this sternum strap bag which holds up to a litre, so that will go through the washing machine along with my food bags that also get suspended off the front, the 2-3-litre food bags. So all of those will also be washed and re-waterproofed as well. There you have it. That is the bulk of my hike planning. I hope you found some useful information in there. It can be a very stressful process, but gee, you know, it really doesn't need to be. Mine's a very streamlined system now. You'd find that when you use a formula like I use, that it makes it really stress-free, really quick to do, and before you know it, you're all ready for your next adventure. Thank you so much for watching again, and happy hiking. Bye for now.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic lights.